are going to be focusing on the battery today. As you can see, this battery has quite a bit of corrosion on the negative and the positive terminal, and that's not such a good thing. Battery needs to be clean, corrosion free, and well taken care of in order for the vehicle to run properly and start properly. Battery's main function is to help start the vehicle. Once the vehicle is started, it acts as basically a storage area for the voltage that the vehicle needs to run. So basically, the alternator here puts power back into the battery, and then the devices, radio, lights, sensors, everything else that runs takes power from the battery. But when you get corrosion on the battery, it can be really detrimental to your car. It can actually kill the battery, it can cause it not to charge, it can cause all sorts of other issues. So it's quite imperative that you take care of the battery and get it clean. So today I'm going to show you how to do that. Alright, when taking a battery off out of the truck, you have to be very careful, and I'll show you why. This is just a standard voltmeter. It can detect different voltage ranges. Today we're going to be using DC volts, and the 20 is because that's 20 volts. Nothing in this truck right now will exceed 20 volts, so that's the maximum range we need right now. Now, when you're working on a battery, specifically taking it out, you have the positive and the negative. You always take the negative off first, and you put the negative on last. I'll show you why. Right now, as you can see, there's 0 volts on the voltmeter. Now, if I put the positive here and the negative here, you're getting 12 volts basically. Now, the reason I say take the negative off first and put it on last is the negative is directly connected to all the metal in the truck. So if you do something called a continuity test and something is connected to one another, you can hear it beeping. So basically, you put one end on the negative, and see, I'm touching it to a bolt. So essentially, the negative is connected to everything on the vehicle. It's the ground. So if you were to basically put the positive on first, or I'm sorry, last, and you were tightening this up, and you were to hit this or this, you could arc. You would basically connect the positive to a negative somewhere in the body, and your battery could explode or it would short out. So basically, when you have the negative, it's fine. Everything in the body's negative, so you're okay. But if you were to do that to the positive, your battery would blow up. So basically, take the negative off first and put it on last, and you'll be okay. Next, we are going to loosen these up. Now, this one's pretty corroded, so you gotta kind of be careful with it. So we'll take this off, get this out. Now keep in mind, when you take your battery out, it'll reset your computer and you'll probably lose your radio settings, which isn't too big of a deal, but you can see all the white chia pet stuff that grew on this terminal, so it's a good thing we're doing this now. Or yeah, you can see it's all over the place. It looks like Comet, but that's actually just solid corrosion. So you take the negative off first and then do the positive. Get this guy out of the way. Okay, that's off. Next, you take the battery hold down bolts out. These are 8mm, so I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, now that you have the battery out, you can start to clean it. Now I'll show you something that's really interesting. This is one of the main reasons you want to make sure that your battery is clean. Like I showed you earlier, this is the positive terminal and this is the negative terminal. They're not connected right now. There's nothing connecting them. So if you do this, you should see, a little hard. You'll see 12 volts. But if you look at this, make sure you guys can see it. Let me make sure, sorry guys. Okay, you can see that it's at 0. Now, if you do this, positive to negative, you obviously get 12 volts. Well, when you get corrosion and acid that sits on top of the battery, they will actually start the acid will actually kind of start trying to go towards one another. The positive and the negative will actually attract, and once you get a path across it, it will slowly start killing your battery. It's called surface discharge because the discharge of the battery is occurring across the surface of it. So you take the positive and you see there's nothing. Now I'm going to touch it here by the negative. 6 volts, almost 7, 8, 9 volts. Now this is plastic, this is an insulator, this should not conduct electricity. So what you're seeing is the corrosion is actually conducting electricity. Same thing with the negative. So this is one of the main reasons you need to keep your battery clean, because just this corrosion sitting on here will actually kill it. So what I do is I usually take a paper towel and just kind of brush all the loose corrosion off. Now, it's a really good idea to wear eye protection because this stuff gets in your eye, it's pretty nasty. Now you can see the battery case is kind of distorted and this cap's popped up from the hold down being used improperly. So what I'll try to do is get the corrosion out from under that. Pry this up a little bit. Anytime you're working with a battery, wear protective eyewear. Try to keep the stuff out of the holes or else it'll kill the battery. So make sure this is clean and then put that back. Same with the other side. Just make sure these are on nice and tight. This one's kind of popped up, so make sure there's nothing under it and push it back. There we go. Now the battery is nice and tight. Now what I use, there's a whole lot of different things you can use. I just use standard run-of-the-mill glass cleaner. And I just spray the battery all over. Make sure you douse it. And I usually let it sit. I will come back after it sits. Alright, so it's sat for about 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is take my hose, set it on the shower setting, and wash it off. It's not going to hurt anything. You don't have to worry about electrical arcing or anything. The battery's inert right now. So take that when you're done, wipe down the top, make sure to get the sides, and just hose it off really good. Alright, so the battery's clean. Let me reposition the camera and I'll show you what to do on the vehicle. Alright, now this is a battery terminal service tool. This end goes over the posts on the battery to get the corrosion off, and this end goes inside the terminals on the car. So you do is you take this, stick it in here, kind of turn it. This stuff isn't the best to breathe, so don't stick your face too close to it. I've gotten most inside out, so now what I'm going to do is take a standard wire brush and get in here best I can. Now some cars the positive gets the most corrosion, some cars gets the negative. There's no real consistency about why it does it. But yeah, so get this guy nice and clean. Try not to poke yourself with the wire brush, because if battery acid gets in your finger, it's not fun. And then same thing on this guy. This guy has a lot less on it, but you still got to do it. And then same thing with this tool. And then this vehicle has battery hold down bolts, so hit them with the wire brush too best you can and get all the corrosion off it. And we'll get the second one, do the same thing. Alright, this is pretty much clean now. What you got in here is you have all this other mess in here. Now it's dirt, corrosion, everything, but the lowest point is right here. I drilled a little hole so that you can essentially hose it out. There's a couple bolts here that are nice and crusty, so get those too. And then just take your hose and wash it out. I'll do that and then I'll come back. Alright, now you can see the battery tray is nice and clean. Hosed it out, cleaned it with the glass cleaner, got all the garbage out of it, so we're going to go ahead and put the battery back. As you can see, it's significantly cleaner. So now that this is in, what we'll do is we will put the battery hold down on. You can see nice and clean, but make sure we center it. Unfortunately, it doesn't quite want to fit between center of the battery, so we'll just put it on there like that and just make sure we don't over tighten it like it was before. Now it's time to put the hold down bolts back on. But before you do, what I like to do if they're metal is put some of this on it. This is dielectric grease. Some people call it tune-up grease, but if you put it on this, it'll keep it from corroding. Basically stops electrolysis, all sorts of other stuff. You put it on the end of spark plug wires, put it on the battery terminals, but I like to put it on the threads, keep them from rotting, and just kind of coat the whole bolt with it. And put some on the head of it too, so that it doesn't rot. The problem is these bolts are made out of metal, and the battery gives off gases when it's charging, and the gases it gives off like to corrode metal. So it's kind of an uphill battle, but doing this helps keep it from reoccurring. But kind of glob it on here. It doesn't run or anything, so it's pretty easy to deal with, but let's put it back in here. And now I'm going to go ahead and tighten it. Alright, we got the hold down installed. Not too tight. Moves a little bit, but I didn't want to crush the top of the battery, but the battery is pretty secure, so what I'll do next, some people use these, some people don't. I like to use them. They're like $1.29 at the auto parts store. You really can't go wrong. These are anti-corrosion washers. They're basically felt washers, and they have some chemical they're treated with that helps stop corrosion. So red on positive, green on negative, and then get the dielectric grease again and put some on the bottom of the terminal, smear it on the parts you're not going to be able to get at in a minute, and then go ahead and put this on. Now you want it to be pretty snug, so what I usually do is hold it down while I tighten it so it doesn't move. Alright, now that's on. Then get some more dielectric grease, smear it on the top, on the bolt, because if the bolt and the nut get corroded, you won't be able to get them off. Now, same thing with the negative, but some cars, depending on the alarm they have, when you connect the negative, the alarm will go off, so just be aware of that. Sometimes it'll happen. Might startle you, might hit your head on the underside of the hood, might drop something on yourself. It's happened to everybody, including me, so just a heads up. Let me show you how to take care of that. Alright, here's the keyless entry remote. What I normally do, I'll just start pressing on lock and then put the negative on. And hopefully it won't honk at you. This one's actually kind of cockeyed, so the same thing, cover it with grease. I already got the bottom, and cover the nut, and then where these wires are crimped into the connector, cover them as well, because what will happen is if you get corrosion on here, it'll actually walk down the wire underneath the insulation, and it can travel different places. On the positive side, it can even go all the way down to the starter, so I'll leave that out of the way. So kind of goop this all over the place. You can't really use too much. So push this down. Like I said, do the negative last, because if you touch the body with it, it's not going to arc and cause you trouble. So make sure it's nice and tight. Not going anywhere. Wipe this cover off a little bit. And let's see. Get my wrench out of the way. Let's see if she fires. And that's how you do a battery service. Now, if you need to get your car smog, you disconnect the battery. It's going to clear the codes and reset the computers, so depending on your make and model, you might have to drive 30 to 40 miles to get it to reset, so keep that in mind. Like I said earlier, you're probably going to have to reset your radio stations, but it's not too big of a price to pay to make sure your battery lasts longer, because doing this preventative maintenance is huge and can actually significantly extend the life of your battery. So yeah, stay tuned for more. Thanks, guys.